Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So today we're going to quickly react to a portion of the middle ground. Is being fat or skinny a choice? Is being fat a choice, right? I want to go ahead and just comment on this first prompt because I did watch the whole thing, but most of it was not all that interesting. This first prompt, though, was very interesting. So we're going to react to what they said here.
Being fat or skinny is a choice.
So I would say ultimately, yes. I do find it interesting that Jubilee's audience says no. So it just goes to show, like, Jubilee, we need to preface by saying it's a very, very biased place. And I've noticed, because I've done a few fat acceptance reactions when it comes to Jubilee, they are very, very much drinking the fat acceptance Kool-Aid. So I'm not surprised that their audience is already starting strong with fat acceptance talking points. So ultimately, what is a choice? A choice is a decision. Ultimately, yes, it is a choice. Is it a free choice? No. But how many things in life are actually a free choice? I would say pretty much almost nothing. Maybe you can choose to wear a blue or a red shirt today. But if you have a job where you're required to wear a certain color, then you don't even have that free choice, but you're still choosing to put it on. So I get very frustrated, especially within fat acceptance spaces, because they typically will rely heavily on choice as an idea, as an ideal. But in reality, I find free choice to be kind of a myth. It doesn't actually exist. We always have societal pressures, financial pressures, and even hormonal pressures upon us with every decision that we make. Now, does that mean that we don't have control over our behavior? Absolutely not. But it is still a choice at the end of the day. Even if your hormones are messing you up, even if your finances are tricky, or you're having social pressure to not lose weight, you could still make the choice to swim upstream and say, no, I'm not going to be fat. So I think that that's important to understand. A lot of people don't think of it that way. They think of it as if there's if there isn't a choice with zero interference or zero pressures, then it's not actually a choice, but it still is. Because a choice is something that you can or cannot do. Can you be thin? Yes, you can.
Agreeers?
So I would walk forward.
Of course, not every factor is purely choice. I don't think that every factor is, but I do think a majority of it is.
So again, choice is a tricky word. Free choice, in my opinion, is kind of a myth. We always have pressures. Always. So that's not any different in the case of being overweight.
Most cases, for most people, being skinny or being fat is about willpower. It's about the environment you grow up in, sure.
I don't think it's 100% about willpower, but it is definitely about what you're actually doing, right? I do need to make videos on willpower because it's important to cover, I guess. It's hard to just like do a diet with pure willpower forever. I think you have to think of other things, and things have to become habits, and habits have to build on each other over many years even. And then it's like, I don't know, like I don't put that much willpower towards staying on my diet, if that makes any sense. There's still definitely willpower involved within the deficit, but at certain times it's not as much. At other times it's more. It kind of ebbs and flows. So don't rely too heavily on it, is what I'll say. But yes, it is a part of it.
but who you choose to associate with, what sort of things you choose to listen to, who you choose to kind of have as your friends around you and support you, all of those things are choices that you can make that
I agree with that.
That will lead you closer towards being one or the other.
I know what I do with my body. I know what I put into it, day in and day out. I choose not to eat some days.
See, it's crazy how, I don't know, it's just weird to me how this is handled. And I'm not blaming him, like, he's fine as a person. I don't have an issue with Parker. But what I'm saying is, like, it's so interesting to me how Jubilee always frames being thin or, like, being skinny or something as, like, people who never eat. But then they also are like, well, skinny people eat junk food all the time. It's like, make it make sense, Jubilee, like, and people on this panel, like, which is it? Because, you know, I'm not going to watch the whole thing with you guys, but he definitely has signs, at least, of some kind of restrictive issue. Because I don't think it's not necessarily normal to just not eat, in my opinion. I would consider that an issue, 100%.
I choose, you know, how I want to look, and
see, especially followed by that statement, I don't eat because I choose how I want to look. It's like, whoa, okay.
I don't fault anyone for how they want to look or how they want to be, but I think it's a choice at the end of the day. I'm very, you know, always wish-washy on how I want to be presented and if I want to gain weight or not. But the only person that's going to gain the weight at the end of the day is me and me myself.
For me, it's calories in, calories out, go to the gym.
So she was kind of the villain of this video, but to be honest, I watched it and she wasn't really that bad. I guess, you know, all the panel freaked out because she doesn't like that Lizzo dresses scantily clad, which it's like, I don't know. That's her opinion. It's not that big of a deal, in my opinion. Like, if somebody doesn't like it, I think most people don't. And I think a lot of the people on the panel are kind of delusional when they're like, what is it? Is it a problem? Da, da, da. Most people don't think it looks good. You know, if I would have been on the panel, I would have just turned to her and I would have said, you know, the one girl that was a model, I would have turned to her and said, look, most people do not think it looks good. It's just a fact. And you got to deal with that, you know? You're not going to change people's minds on that. You're just not.
You'll get buff. Don't go to the gym. You won't get buff. I understand.
So I think it's a little bit simplistic, the way that she frames it. But yes, overall, the bones of what she's saying are true. Absolutely. I think when you're really, 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 really huge, the gym can be a very integral part of weight loss. So it's definitely more of a thing, regardless of if you want to be buff or not. It's within long haul weight loss, it's important to do exercise. It's absolutely important. It's very vital. I don't like how de-emphasized exercise is in a lot of these discussions. Like, I'm telling you guys, if you guys are like 300, 350, 400, you definitely are going to have to exercise to get some of that weight off, or, you know, throughout your time of losing weight, because it really helps you in a lot of different ways. It helps with your hunger. It helps with your carb metabolism. It helps with dopamine balance, especially in the case of lifting weights. That can help prevent boredom, especially since you're not eating all the time anymore. It's really, really important. So I always try to talk about how important activity is, because it's constantly downplayed in these discussions, and it's very frustrating. Like, I used to be super morbidly obese. I'm not anymore. And activity was a huge part of that, both low intensity, like walking, and a little bit average intensity of weightlifting. So both of those types of exercises were very important for getting this weight off sustainably.
And there's genetics that could cause you to want to eat more, but even with the genetics,
it's not necessarily genetics. It would have to be it'd have to be more like a hormonal issue, which that can occur where the hunger signals get off. It's Obvious ones are things like diabetes. Ones that are a weirdly forbidden truth is like hypothyroidism. And we also know in the case of PCOS, hunger is heavily amplified. So it's important to think about those hormonal factors as well.
That cause you to want to eat more. The same solution is
because low dopamine will also cause you to want to eat more because you're bored. And eating can be a form of stimulation. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but are they all able to be overcome? Yes. Some are easier than others, but if you work at it, it will change. So, and then it goes back to that calories in, calories out, because that's true.
Calories in, calories out.
I think the whole choice is, always determined on who they are. And it's not going to just be a thing done overnight.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of, I think it's like breaking the barrier.
Yeah.
And
that's true. It's always long term. Okay. So anything with weight loss, it's extremely long term. You have to think of it years and years in advance. Don't think of it. A lot of people think I'm going to lose all the weight in a year. I don't suggest it for most people. Some people can do it, and if you can, that's fine. But I think we need to normalize the fact that it usually takes longer. It can take 3 to 4 years for a super morbidly obese person. And I think that story needs to be told more, and we need to amplify that because that's a lot more achievable for a majority of people in this situation. So always think long term. It is a long game. It's a very long game from a very big size. It's long. Okay?
Breaking a lot of things, not only your body, but also breaking your mental state.
Sure.
And again, that depends on who you are and what you want to go through.
Disagreeers?
Okay. So now the clown show is coming in. So let's go.
I felt like as a toddler, I always viewed myself as big. I grew up in a very poor home, so where my mom couldn't provide the meals that she could healthily. So when we would get free meals.
So I actually felt for her. A lot of you guys have already seen this. She talks about a lot of things like being poor and stuff. Let's go ahead and hear it.
Even then, it would be canned food, and it would be very much food that's not as edible. It was food for us, yes, but then I felt like once it reached a point where I was old enough to try to make my own choices, I made all of the wrong choices. I wasn't eating, and I was only eating grapes and lettuce, and that was mainly because I was in a sport, and that sport just worked me out so hard.
So that's interesting to me. I had the opposite experience. I've had a lot of struggles with poverty, to be honest, especially in my adult life. I've struggled with, not making very much money at all. And when I was struggling before my last huge BED episode, it was precipitated by a long time of being unemployed and being impoverished and not having choices when it came to food, having to depend on other people in my life, which is really scarring, but having to do that kind of thing and not being able to go to the store and buy what I wanted. So when I got a job and I started making a little bit of money, it kicked off my BED so bad because I finally had a choice. And it's so sometimes I can go the complete opposite. That's how it was in my case. And I think a lot of people, they talk about poverty in terms of weight gain, but they don't talk about the actual reasoning behind it. And it has a lot to do with food insecurity. And it's a lot more psychological than even physical, because when you feel like you can't afford to buy what you want, then the second you can, it can trigger a response where you want everything that you couldn't have for the past however long. And so I think that experience is more so how poverty is tied to obesity, because a lot of people say that people who are very, very poor are gaining weight. Typically, that's not the case because you can't afford extra food. Duh. But people don't always stay impoverished for their entire lives. And sometimes you have phases where you're making more and phases where you're making less. And in those phases that you make more, weight gain is very common as a result of the psychological effects of poverty. So I find it interesting that she went in the complete opposite direction. But it sounds like she was in a sport, and eating just grapes and lettuce is a completely imbalanced diet, and it would completely shoot your thyroid health, absolutely, and make weight regain incredibly easy.
And it was to the point where I just was scared to eat. I didn't like it. I would only drink water.
When you were eating grapes and lettuce, were you thin?
I was the thinnest I could be.
Were you still big though?
I was still big.
So she was probably still big because it probably didn't go on that long. I think a lot of times very fat people, they talk about these diets or these restrictive periods as if they were doing it for like 10 years, and it's not true. She was probably doing that for, you know, maybe 6 months or something, maybe 8 months. At the greatest amount of time, probably a year. That's just my assumption. It's my speculation. But if you're very, very big, you can still be big after a year of being really restrictive. So that could be what she's kind of talking about. And it seems like she definitely rebounded, which will happen if you starve yourself like that. If she's starving herself of nutrition. That's not okay. You're going to shoot your metabolism. Your metabolism runs on vitamins and minerals. Vitamins, minerals, and macros, that's what your metabolism runs on. So if you're not getting enough of any of them, you're going to struggle.
But that was the skinniest I've ever been. And that's coming from somebody who was only eating somewhat salads that are just fruit and lettuce and water and maybe ice right before a practice.
Do you think that right now?
That's an extremely adrenal way of losing weight as well, to like try to run and do practice on that type of diet. It's very, very unsustainable, and it's very damaging to metabolism. So I am not surprised at all that she's still big after something like that.
You would not be capable of becoming a thin woman if you wanted to.
I possibly would be capable of becoming a thin woman, but since I was young, I was supposed to get blood tested probably when I was very, very young, and I never did. And they had mentioned that it could have been because of my weight and how that connects with my thyroid. I never made the connection, and I never had like that.
Especially living off of canned food, sometimes it can be very poor quality. There can be certain ingredients in it that are not great. And that could lead to a bit of a thyroid issue because it's not the best quality of food, which I think we know that. There's, a lot in canned food. I'm not trying to like demonize it or anything. I know I'm probably going to offend somebody. But if you were only living off of canned food, it can absolutely have an effect. So I'm just saying, I have to give her credit where it's due.
Like leaning parent to be like, go and get checked out, go and do this. Like, your weight is probably not your fault. It was always like, your weight is your fault, so that's your issue.
I mean, I also struggle with, thyroid and my own blood issues. I'm not quite sure, but
So I was glad that she brought that up, or that, she didn't bring it up initially, which I would have preferred her to, but she did bring it up, or she agreed, which I think is good.
Do see an endocrinologist and I go see a doctor. It's a choice.
That's a choice. It is a choice to not treat your hormonal issues, whether you do it through a doctor or you work on it naturopathically. Whatever you need to do, you need to do it. Whatever's available to you, you need to take whatever path you have and do something about it. That's about it.
Do the requisite steps. It's a choice to go grocery shopping instead of going to fast food when it's easy.
True.
It's a choice when you're grocery shopping to go to the outer aisles and not go into the bread section and not go into the junk food section. These are all choices.
It's true. Those are choices. That's true.
As a disabled woman, I can't do a lot of the things that people say, calories in, calories out, oh, you gotta go work out and exert.
So I don't understand what she means by, as a disabled woman, she can't control her calories. That's something she would really, really need to explain, because that sounds really weird to me. Is she saying that her conditions or something that she has going on will get worse if she's in a deficit? Like, what exactly is she saying there? Because she mentioned specifically calories in, calories out first. So that really needs to be explained. Otherwise, it makes no sense to somebody. Like, I have no idea what she's talking about.
A lot of the things that are typical, oh, this is how you lose weight, put me in the hospital. I have to navigate.
So she might be saying in terms of like exercise, maybe. That would make the most sense to me, at least on an intuitive level. But I think in the case of disability, you have to just try to do the best you can with what you can. And, you know, don't feel ashamed of what you can't do or whatever. It's not important. What's important is just that you're doing the best you can. As far as the calorie control side of it, I am really confused about it. So if anybody has any insight on that, please let me know.
Weight differently. I have to look at it differently. My weight is the way it is because of medication, because doctors put me in this position, and I had to learn, okay, am I going to be so hateful of my own body that I am going to backlash and put myself through extreme gym nights, through...
Okay, well, you don't need to do a backlash. You don't need to be so extreme. As far as her medication, I mean, I guess you have to do a cost benefits analysis, but if your medication is really making you like morbidly obese, then I would try to get different medication or try to mitigate it or try to do something a little differently, you know, because she looks definitely on the bigger side to be like, this is just because of my medication. And again, it's not looking great when she just said that she can't control her calories due to her disability. It just sounds weird to me. It really sounds fishy.
For keeping myself from eating things that I should be able to eat. You should be able to have a balance.
So no, I think...
You should be able to go into the junk food aisle like other skinny people.
No. So this is totally wrong. This is kind of like disgustingly wrong, actually. If you are not well for whatever reason, whether it's just obesity related issues, like in my case, you know, I have had at least severe hypothyroidism, lots of problems, fatty liver, right? Just a lot of the stuff, okay? I cannot drink because I have a fatty liver. Whether I should or shouldn't be able to have a moment, I don't ever drink because I'm not well. I'm not going to put those limitations on every other person in my life, but for myself, I am not well. It is not wise for me to do certain things. I also, due to my hypothyroidism, I have pretty hectic or harsh gluten intolerance. So would it be smart for me to just eat bread? No, it's not smart to just eat bread. Not for me. You know, I think it's really important to understand your limitations. And if your issues are at all influenced by your diet, you should be stricter than somebody who's healthy. So she's completely wrong. This is terrible advice. This is like deadly advice. You have to be stricter if you're not doing as well. You got to be stricter. That is horrifically bad advice. That is such a dumb mindset. Do not listen to this woman. That is terrible advice.
And still not have to worry about gaining 20 pounds.
Still, shoulda, woulda, coulda. It doesn't matter. If that's the situation that you're in, you have to accept it. I have to accept the fact that I have fatty liver. I probably will not have it forever. I probably will have a drink again in my life. But for the time being, I'm not doing it. I am not drinking at all during my weight loss journey. I'm not doing it because it is not healthy for me. I am not well. I'm not going to tax an already taxed system in my body. I am not going to make it any harder for myself when my body is already struggling to deal with the weight loss itself, the fact that I was super morbidly obese for so many years, the fact that I'm still morbidly obese, My body has to deal with these things. I am not going to make it any harder, and neither should you. This is a terrible mindset to have. Terrible.
I don't think skinny people go
all
into
people.
this junk food aisle.
They
I think
certainly
Yes,
do.
they do.
I eat a lot of junk food.
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of junk
Yeah.
So I find the junk food virtue signaling moment as really, really cringy. Let's keep it a buck. You know you guys are not eating anywhere near as many calories as a fat person. I know you're not. I've had a lot of skinny friends that eat junk food. One of my friends, her eating junk food is she had a handful of gummy bears and one hamburger at McDonald's. That was her eating junk food. Tiny amount of calories. Don't play with me. You don't fool me. You guys are nuts. Like, that type of situation is just cringe. They're trying to act like one of the only people on this panel that has any sense is the dumbest person in the world, because they think that if they just laugh and try to virtue signal and do all this stuff, that what she's saying has no merit. But if I were there, I'd say, you all know you don't eat anywhere as many calories as the fat people on this panel. You don't eat junk food every single day. You don't eat junk food for every single meal. I used to do that. You don't go through phases where you eat junk food all the time. That doesn't happen. You might have one thing of junk food one time a day, and then the rest of the time you're eating like a bird. I have a lot of skinny friends. I know what they do. Yes, it's not healthy, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about fat. Okay? If they're not as hungry, or they don't have like these hormonal issues, if they're not having insulin resistance and all these problems, they're not going to be as hungry. If they haven't damaged their body through BED, they're not going to be as hungry. So they might have junk food occasionally, but it's nowhere on the level of the fat people on this panel. And I would call that out if I was there. I'd say, yeah, but you don't eat anywhere near as much as the fat people here do. Like, it's ridiculous.
My DoorDash would tell you otherwise.
Yeah, your DoorDash when you just said that you don't eat some days. Okay. Stupid.
Like,
There's a thing called set points. There's a ton of
It's complete bullshit. Sorry, I have to just say that. I can't even censor that.
research on it.
When I hear the word set point, I think bullshit. It just comes to me. It's like, whew.
That your body likes to be at
So this woman is extremely delusional. So let's hear her takes.
specific weights. It likes to be in a specific way.
Yeah, so your body would like to be in a normal BMI. Your body would like to not be obese. Your body would not like to be super morbidly obese. Your body would not like to be underweight. Your body wants to be normal weight. Let's not project our delusions onto our bodies, okay? That's what your body wants to be. Your body, at the end of the day, is trying to survive at all moments. That's what your body is designed, programmed, evolved, whatever word you want to choose. That's what it is doing. It's surviving. What is going to help your survival the most is to maintain a healthy weight. So that's what your body wants. You just have other plans, okay?
So if you are fighting yourself to lose weight by not eating, over exercising, and you are damn near killing yourself.
Yeah, well, I don't know why they always jump to not eating at all and overtraining. I don't know why they can't just think slight calorie deficit and light exercise or weightlifting. I know it doesn't sound that exciting or radical, but that's what it's going to take. It's something like that. I mean, you guys are so ridiculous. And I would say that if I was on this panel. I would.
To be at a specific weight, your body's unhappy.
It's important to note that a choice can be harder for people to make due to conditions in their life.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's still a choice.
100% true.
I could say that I had food addiction. I looked to food when I was stressed and this and that and this. And so it's harder for me to choose it than for someone who has like the perfect lifestyle, someone who has parents who are giving them this and that and this. But I definitely still acknowledge that it was my choice. At the end of the day, when I
Yes.
go there and I look and I see, should I order a second hamburger? I'm the one choosing whether or not I order
Dead on. So on point.
that second hamburger. I'm the one making that choice.
Oh, I forgot they did this ad. Let me see if I can skip the ad. Oh, okay. Guess that's it for this one. I guess we can maybe do one more. No. Yes, I'm deciding. Okay, I want to do one more. This one is like kind of problematic. Let's do it. I would rather be skinny than fat. I would. I mean, I don't know about how skinny, but yeah, I mean, for me personally, it would be much easier. Like if I was underweight, it would be much easier for me to just eat more to gain the weight. I mean, let's keep it 100. Just saying. So I'd rather that because it'd be an easier issue for me to fix. If it was like I was super, super skinny, it would be really easy for me. But if we're talking just like normal weight, yes, 100%.
I think there's a lot of different struggles when it comes to being a bit bigger. And I have a sister that is very, like, she's 400 pounds and she struggles a lot. She has lymphedema and to shower is really, really hard. So I do think for like an overall happy life and like zero struggle, I think I'd rather be skinny.
I think that it is common in society to want to be skinny. I think the average person typically wants to be skinny. I'm actually surprised that I didn't see more people come forward on.
I'm not surprised because a lot of those people are kind of delusional and they think it's like a badge of honor to be fat, and you know, they're on some kind of crusade of fatness. So it's like a huge virtue point to say like, I don't want to be thin. So I'm not at all surprised whatsoever. She may not be immersed in this culture, but I certainly am. So it was not a shock for me.
That question, people treat you better. It is.
So I do find it interesting too that so many times people talk about only social benefits. There are social benefits, but the physical benefits are so much more important. And honestly, like the fact that I can spend more time now worrying about my dating life and my finances than my health, that's a true testament to what weight loss can accomplish, because I can happily pursue YouTube full time, which is what I'm doing now, because I'm healthier. And that's a huge accomplishment that I could be really emotional about if I really think about it, because I have the energy to do that. I can do it. That's what's important. It's just that you can do more.
What is considered the standard of beauty, your life expectancy is longer, you tend to be healthier.
I'm also really tall, I'm 6'6", so I kind of wish I could just pick a single struggle, because
it's very hard to be big and tall. I'm not 6'6", I'm 6'1", but when you're like over 6 feet and you're really fat, it's really difficult. Like you can break chairs easier. Getting on a plane, oh my god, it's just a nightmare. Like, and I have to be like pretty thin to not be, you know, getting on somebody else type of thing in the plane, because I'm just a bigger person. Like there have been times where I've been like, gosh, like it's easier to be a fat woman or like a fat short woman because you can still fit in most places. Whereas like for me in high school, I couldn't fit in the desk chairs. In college, I couldn't fit in those chairs. You know, it was just so much harder. So I did like that he talked about that, because I'm like, yeah, that's tough. You know, even fitting in a car and stuff. Like, of course, if you get big enough, anybody can struggle with that. But I was not that big, if that makes any sense. But yeah, it's a thing.
Finding clothes and things like that when you're bigger both ways can make it really hard. So if I was skinnier, at least that's one less thing I have to worry about. But also, I've got 2 kids and a wife, and I'm taking care of them. And as you pointed out, I definitely think that I'm at less health risks if I'm a skinnier person, if I'm a healthier person in that capacity. And I would much rather be that so that I could be around for my kids longer.
100%.
Can the
Oh gosh, here we go.
Agreeers, please.
Hold on. I need to prepare. The clown show is coming. Okay. Whew. I hear like the ice cream truck music. Okay, let's go.
Step forward.
I'm speaking as someone who actually was a former smaller person, and I had the most body insecurities when I was small. I was constantly living.
Bullshit. Liar. Absolute liar. Sorry.
In fear of gaining weight and having people tell me, oh, don't gain weight, don't do this, make sure that your weight is the
Bull.
same. And once I finally gained weight, I realized that
Even the way her voice cracked and stuff, I'm like, yeah, okay. All right. All right. You know what's interesting too is like these same people, they'll be like, fat shaming is so much worse than skinny shaming. Well, why? Oh, right, because you're more insecure at that weight. It's ridiculous.
first off, life wasn't over. I didn't feel any need to not engage in life the previous way that I had.
That's not even true either, because you have literally said that you're disabled, that you've developed a disability. I'm not saying that that's why she gained weight. I'm just saying that her life has obviously changed since, you know, before she was fat. And just be honest about it. And she'll be sure to tell you, like, that her disability precipitated her weight gain, which is fine. I can understand that. But your life is different than it was. Like, let's acknowledge that.
And the attention that I got was different, but even as a smaller person, you get negative attention. And rather than trying to control my body to avoid that negative attention, I would prefer to address the situation as a society, make it.
Okay, well, that's really not useful. Like, that's not a good use of your time. It's not a good use of your energy, especially when it's at the expense of your health. Now, I understand that you may not be healthy for whatever reason, but that being said, it's even less of a reason to try to, like, do activism and this type of stuff in regards to this, because you're wasting the time you have, you're wasting the energy that you have on something that ultimately is not going to happen. And I don't typically say that about, like, movements and stuff, because I know, like, you know, I'm not like a dream killer, but when it comes to fat acceptance, it's not a thing. I'm sorry. Like, it just isn't. It's not real. It was always fake. Just because a bunch of millennials pretended that they were okay with it doesn't mean that any other generation pretended, even for at all. And it doesn't mean that you weren't just a splash in the sea of thousands of years of history. Gen Z's going back to being not into being fat. Alpha's not going to be into being fat. None of the other ones are. It's done. Like, just stop. It's really cringy. So I would just say, like, don't waste your time. Don't waste your energy. Like, just focus on yourself and do what you can to be as happy and healthy as you can. But this movement is not it's not anything that I would sacrifice my energy, time, health, nothing for. It's not worth it. It isn't. So I don't think it's just about whatever negative attention you're getting or positive attention you're getting. That ultimately doesn't matter. What matters is your health at the end of the day.
More accessible for everybody, to where we aren't feeling like I have to be a certain way that's normal in order to be treated like a human being and respected.
For the most part, fat people are treated like a normal human being, or treated like a human being. I think that it's so extra for them to say that. You're literally on this panel. You're literally talking about this. Like, I don't know if it's like paranoia. I don't know if it's just insecurity. I don't know where that rhetoric comes from, because yes, fat shaming is a thing, and maybe this or that, but like somebody giving you a look because you chose a piece of cake or something, that's not denying your humanity. Like, it's just so dramatic. It's so dramatic when they talk about it like that. It's so cringe.
If I could counter, because I was a bit bigger when I was younger, and that's when I was the most insecure. I would look in the mirror. I did have family members that were skinny, but then I had a family member that was much bigger. And just the way that I perceived myself, I hated it, and I even became anorexic too.
That's not good. Not at all good. But again, I'm not surprised because Jubilee always chooses, like, anybody who's skinny is because they starve themselves, they have an ED, you know, they always make sure that they select people like that all the time. It's so cringe. That's why I don't typically like to respond or react to Jubilee, because it's so cringe in that way. But that's a Jubilee issue. It's nothing on her.
Not be big.
I don't think skinny always equates to being healthy.
Exactly.
Duh. But obese always equates to being unhealthy. That's the problem. That's what people don't acknowledge.
I am fairly skinny. I'm 6'5". I'm 140 pounds last time I checked.
It's bad. It's really bad. Like, he needs to get it together. That's very bad. I think even for me, like, if I were to ever get to like 130, that would be like terrible for me. And he's like taller than me, and he's like barely over that. Like, that's crazy to me. Oh my gosh. I mean, no, I don't support undereating either, for the record. I know everybody acts like if you're anti-FA, then you just want everyone to starve themselves, but that's not how I feel at all. I don't think that's good.
Severely underweight, and I know about this on a day-to-day basis. That being said, I don't know where I'd want to lean at an appropriate weight level, but I think it's important to understand for some skinny people, we're not living a great life by any means. And sometimes I feel like that's always kind of lost in translation when they see someone who's really skinny.
I guess it depends on what you mean when you think of the term skinny. Are you thinking of just like an average weight person, or are you thinking of how you are now?
I'm the average weight.
Where? Globally? Are you? Okay, this is a moment where you're doing the whole Americans don't know anything about anywhere else and you're kind of up your own butt. That was cringe. Super cringy. Gosh. You're not average. You're huge. I'm sorry. Like, I'm just going to keep it a buck. And I wouldn't usually say that, but I'm going to because you tried to say that. That's insane.
Or like women in America.
Yeah,
so if we're talking about an average, like I'm gonna be the closest. If you're
obese, you're probably at least morbidly obese, I would say. I don't know if you're full on SMO, but you could be. That's ridiculous.
Biggest priority is to be at a smaller body. You need to reassess your priorities.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. If you're super morbidly obese, then it should be your top priority to get your weight under control, because nothing else ultimately matters, because you're not going to be able to do anything else effectively. You're going to struggle with basic tasks, and you're not going to be anywhere near as able or accomplishing things as you could otherwise, because you can do something about it. It's going to affect you mentally. It's going to affect your ability to have positive relationships, romantic relationships. It affects how you think. It affects how you see the world. It affects everything about you, especially at such a big size. It's so negative. So it should be your top priority. I always say it should be your top priority, but not your only priority. That's the difference.
Focus on health.
Yeah.
And the immediate tie between skinniness and health, like you emphasized, there is such a gap between, one, the research, because the research has a huge fatphobic bias in it, and there has been research that shows that they aren't, even especially during, let's say, COVID.
Delusional.
COVID and the correlation between obesity. They rushed through those studies so fast because in society's mind, oh, of course a fat person is going to equal someone who's going to get sick faster, is going to get sick easier. It was an easy jump. So they didn't do all of the testing that they were supposed to do. They didn't check their bias.
So
they didn't check.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to let that go.
Saying the study is biased, you're saying that the study didn't account for the variable that obesity may also take a factor into. It's just that there's so many.
It's very obvious because most of the complications due to COVID were autoimmune, had to do with the cytokine storm, if you guys remember that. I'm sure these terms are like probably bringing shocking triggers to people. But it has to do with cytokine storms, autoimmunity, etc., the body attacking itself rather than just the virus. And those issues are more likely to occur in obese individuals. Autoimmunity in general is worse. If you think of things like arthritis, it's going to affect an obese person more. If you think of breathing issues, which COVID was extremely relevant to breathing, people that are very, very big, we often struggle to breathe. And I'm actually getting better. Like my breathing has been improving and I'm like, I feel like I'm walking on thin ice every day. I'm like, is this really getting better or not? But I think it actually is since I'm no longer SMO anymore. So I'm starting to not be like Amberlyn Reed anymore where she's constantly breathing. I was like that at my biggest. It's difficult. So it is no jump at all to see that COVID would affect a very big person, both hormonally in terms of autoimmunity issues caused by hormone imbalance, or at least encouraged by hormone imbalance, and through breathing issues when a lot of people have sleep apnea anyways when they're fat or they have breathing problems. You guys are delusional.
Variables in humanity that these pharmaceutical companies could only account for so many during their trials, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're biased. However, you want to talk about bias in studies, actually recently we've been doing the opposite. So for instance, a lot of our studies have been based on BMI, and so we've been showing that, oh, fat people aren't necessarily extremely unhealthy if we look at people with a certain BMI. However, bodybuilders also have a really high BMI, and so they get counted into that category. And so it wasn't until very recently that they equated for that mistake, and it shows, oh my goodness, being fat is actually extremely unhealthy.
Yes. Even just being obese is extremely unhealthy. And you're going to hear me say that on this channel a lot because people don't think it's that big of a deal, but it is. It's very, very bad for you, okay?
Way, way more unhealthy than we ever realized.
Yes.
You can't gauge health by looking at somebody.
That's not true. But not in all cases can you. Does that make sense? But if you see somebody who looks like they're on death's door, if they're coughing, they can barely breathe, you know, their eyes are rolling into the back of their head and they passed out on the side of the street, you can tell that somebody's not healthy. Like, that is a really dumb statement. Maybe not in every single case you can't, but in certain cases you absolutely can.
Yeah, like
if somebody has weird lesions all over their body with stuff oozing out of it, you can tell that that person's not healthy. And I'm sorry, but in the case of super morbid obesity, it's very obvious that that person is unhealthy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just not.
My health issues, all of them precipitated my weight gain. But
sure. But the weight gain is a further sign that you have these health issues. Why do they do this so much where they say you can't judge somebody by how they look, but I gained weight due to my health issues? It's like, okay, then you have health issues. So you are not a good example of this person. Stop trying to flip-flop like that. It's really irritating.
I always get assumed, oh, don't you want to be skinny so that you don't have a cane anymore and you don't feel the way you feel? And it's like, no, because I have lupus and I'm always going to feel like this. It's gonna happen, like I have CRPS. It's going to deteriorate. It's going to continue.
okay, but that's not the case for most people. And so trying to push this onto every single other person, I don't think is a good idea. But with that, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and go. Thank you so much for watching. This went on a little longer than I intended. Hopefully Jubilee doesn't get all crazy, but if they do, oh well. I had to do that one because I knew it was going to be a little messy. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys again soon. I'll see you tomorrow. I better do my best to do this full time, so I should be here tomorrow too. I will slap myself if I'm not. Thank you guys so much. Bye.